Recently, I got a comment under one of my videos asking about Burda patterns, and it inspired me to create this video, which is all you need to know about Burda and why it is the only source of sewing patterns that you'll ever need. Hello, welcome back. For those of you who don't know me, welcome. My name is Aniela. I post videos about sewing, knitting, and crochet. And today we are diving into a very exciting topic, an iconic brand in the sewing fashion DIY world, which is Burda. Whether you're a professional or just starting your sewing journey, you have probably heard of it. Maybe not a lot, as we're, let's say, in a digital sewing pattern era where traditional sewing magazines aren't used that much anymore. I would like to share my opinions on this exact magazine, the Burda Style magazine, and how I think it can improve your sewing skills effortlessly and economically. So today we're going to discuss in more detail what exactly is Burda, a little bit of history, the overview, the magazine, Burda Style magazine itself, the patterns, and of course, most importantly, how you can start using it today. So, what is Burda? Burda actually started in Germany in 1949 when Anne Burda launched a fashion magazine that changed the sewing world forever. And what made it revolutionary? She didn't just show beautiful clothes on models, she included the sewing patterns so readers could make them at home. And this was a huge deal. It made the fashion more democratic, especially for women in post-war Europe. Fast forward to today, Burda is still going strong with versions in over 100 countries and millions of readers worldwide. So, Burda Style magazine is a monthly publication that offers patterns, sewing, fashion tips, and advice for fashion enthusiasts. Each magazine contains about 30 exclusive patterns. It typically includes patterns for women's wear, and they will add a little section for children's wear, or menswear, or some type of accessory, costumes, lingerie. It provides a wide range of sewing patterns from beginner-friendly to more advanced, covering various types of clothing. Burda uses European sizing, and it's based on body measurements, and it is recommended to always take your bust, waist, and hip measurements and compare them to the size chart in the magazine. It is always provided right before the patterns, but I personally haven't used it ever, and I have been pretty content with the sizing. It runs true to size, but I still recommend flat measuring the pattern before deciding on which size to cut. And if you are in between sizes, Burda sometimes offers tips on grading between sizes. In most cases, Burda patterns do not include seam allowance, and they are also available separately as a PDF. So where you can find them, you can of course buy the magazine from their original website, burdastyle.com. I believe you can order a subscription as it is a monthly magazine. However, I do not have experience in that matter. I have only bought Burda Style secondhand because I loved the vintage patterns more than the new ones. I was going for more 90s, 2000 style, so I looked for my magazines online. I bought some, for example, on Vinted. I know there are some sellers on Etsy that sell them. I will look for some spaces like Facebook groups, marketplace, any local websites that sells secondhand used items, vintage items. Yeah. And if you're interested in the new publications, they are still available to purchase online. So what can you find in a Burda Style magazine? First, you have the sewing patterns for women like skirts, dresses, jackets, shirts, and more. You have expert advice for sewing techniques, outfit inspirations, designs inspired by the trends of the season, and the selection of patterns that represent the time of the year. So this is what you'll get inside a Burda magazine: fashion editorials, stylized photos of the patterns made up into outfits, sewing pattern instructions, step-by-step guides on how to sew a given item, sort of, because they're very minimalistic, to say the least. Technical drawings, flat sketches that show each garment clearly. Sewing patterns that are printed on this large folded paper sheets and are found in the middle of each magazine. And lastly, these little description sections, what materials to use, styling ideas, and sometimes hacks and techniques. So, how to use a Burda pattern? First, you have to pick the pattern. You can scan the magazine and look at the photos of the already sewn projects on the models. I prefer to look at this page, which is the technical drawing. Sometimes you can't see clearly on the photos, and I just prefer to look at this flat sketch and imagine the project myself with the fabric that I'm going to use. To pick your pattern, you can use the suggestion of the difficulty that is usually represented by the dot system. If it's one dot, it is a quite simple project. And if it has 4 dots, it's probably more advanced. Then, if you found your desired project, let's say you like this dress. I do. First, cross-check if it is in your size, because sometimes you might get surprised. So we have my size, which is 36. Okay, I see the number is 125. So now flip to the instruction pages. You will find the model number again. And now you have everything about this pattern in one place. So you have the sizing again, you have fabric recommendations or requirements. And this part is particularly important because here you can actually see where you will find the pattern on your pattern sheet. Each size has a different tracing line. So you have to look for your size and trace only this line. So for example, for me, it's the long line with dots. And here you'll find also information where to find it on the sheet. So here, for example, I have to look for black lines on the paper sheet A. And I also have the numbers of the patterns, so from 1 to 7. Then we have some information on how to cut the pieces, how many pieces does any piece has to be cut on fold, etc. We have sometimes some parts that have to be cut and they are not traceable. Let's say they're not included in the pattern sheet, because they are a simple rectangle. So you'll find the information about the length and the width of the rectangle that you have to cut. And yeah, they will inform you how much you have to add for the seam allowance, if it was already added or if not, how much for the border, how much for any other type of hem. And yeah, that's basically it. I have already said that the pattern instructions, that the sewing instructions are not very helpful, let's say. I would put it that way. If you know how to sew a given item, then you really don't have to worry about the sewing steps, because all you need is the sewing pattern, and this is the perfect scenario. I would treat these sewing instructions purely as a guideline. They really are very short, and if you are more familiar with sewing tutorials or sewing instructions with pictures, it might be difficult. I have to admit, this part is particularly frustrating if you're sewing a garment for the first time and you don't understand. It happened to me. I had to go and search on the internet for some more in-depth explanation, and usually I end up on YouTube because the amount of knowledge here is amazing. You can find anything online, so I don't think it should stop you from trying out the Burda Style magazine. Yeah, you have your pattern picked, you have found the pattern instructions. Now you have to find it on the pattern sheet. So I already told you everything you have to know is in this box. So when you unfold the pattern sheet, it might get a little bit overwhelming. You will see color-coded lines with numbers all over it, but take it slow. Look for your pattern number and size. For example, the lines for this model are in black. Then trace your pattern. Always use tracing paper, a pen and a ruler, pencil and a ruler. Whatever you need, just trace the patterns, do not cut them, because otherwise you will ruin the other patterns, and you don't want that. You want to use these patterns in the future, right? So yeah, take your time with the tracing. Trace all the notches, all the markings, the grain line, everything that is on your pieces, because it will be very important in the next steps. Then you can add seam allowance. If you prefer, you can add it onto the paper, or you can add it already while cutting the fabric. The fact that you have to add this seam allowance is sometimes frustrating for people. For me personally, it is not. I actually prefer to add my seam allowance. If you think about it, you get more opportunities to make different seams. If you wish to do a front seam or another type of seam, you can decide and how much you want to add, right? And also for the hems, you can add whatever you want. Now you're ready to cut your fabric, transfer markings, and follow the instructions to sew your piece together. Okay, so let's conclude what are the advantages, why people love Burda so much. They have stylish designs that always represent more or less the trends of the season. In each issue, you have a huge variety of clothing that you can potentially sew. It is very budget friendly. You get over 30 different sewing patterns in one single magazine. And if you find it secondhand, you can even pay less. I bought mine for 10 zloty each, which is like €2.5. And lastly, it inspires skill building. You can develop your knowledge of sewing patterns, of how they should look flat, and how you can mix and match different patterns and with slight modifications create new ones. There are of course some common struggles with the magazine. So as I said before, the instructions are brief, sometimes too brief. The pattern sheets also might be confusing at start, but if you're patient, everything will be okay. And there are no seam allowance included. However, as I said before, it might be a struggle, but it also might be a positive thing. It depends. It depends on the preference. The good news is, once you get the hang of it, the value is amazing. So whether you're here to create your own dream DIY wardrobe or learn to sew, Burda has something to offer. Let me know in the comments if you have ever used the Burda pattern and if you have a favorite design or number of the magazine, or if you're thinking about trying one. And if you have enjoyed watching this video, you can check other videos on my channel. I create content about sewing and I throw in some knitting and crochet from time to time. Or you can go check out my Instagram, where I try to post more frequently about my projects, or Vinted, where I sell some selected garments that I make. All the links are down below. Thank you again so much for watching. It means a lot. And I really hope to see you next time.